Hey, Nick Ferguson, Secondary Perspective here. We like to bring you the best and the brightest in sports and entertainment. And here's a little bit of the interview with Cree, former San Diego State quarterback, who is building quarterbacks on the field, off the field. Here's a little of what he's been able to do. It's Nick Ferguson here at Orange Glen High School in San Diego with Cree Morris. Let's talk a little bit about the quarterback position. There's a lot of misconceptions about what the quarterback position is. And in the NFL, people talk about the big arm. Explain your reasons for not considering the big arm to be a very big part of being a quarterback.
Well, I mean, they talk about Joe Montana possibly being the greatest ever. And I don't think anyone would confuse him with Aaron Rodgers as far as arm strength. You know, but he had phenomenal footwork and understood the timing of each route. And so whether you have a big arm or not a big arm, there's guys unfortunately that have big arms that throw the ball late. There's a couple guys in the NFL, I don't want to mention names, but they do that. They rely on their arm. If they relied on their feet and their rhythm and timing of throws, I think they'd be a lot more consistent and have a lot more success. You look at the guys that have the success right now, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees. You know, out of that group, the only big arm guy is Rodgers. You know, Peyton Manning, how has he thrown for so many yards and he's never been considered a huge arm guy? Therefore, they understood that to have the timing is you got to understand your feet, the footwork, and your body positioning in making those throws. You got to know if you can, you know, if it's a quick 5 or a regular 5 and a hitch, if it's you know, a deep 7, a short 7, and understanding the rhythm and timing of throws, which gets your body in position to have success.
Right, you have a very unique way of coaching the position, and you have like 5 rules. Talk to us about that.
Just 5 tools. You know, I run a 5-tool football system, but for quarterbacks specifically, we have 5 tools. Number 1 being leadership. You know, you got to be able to lead yourself and lead your teammates. And it's just things that I've come up with over the years that I feel the most important to being a quarterback. Number 2 is knowledge. You know, not just your own position. You got to understand everybody's position on the field, offensively, defensively, the check with me's, the verbiage, what the defense is trying to do to you, and whether they're blitzing, like we talked about, you safety, you know, moving down, you know, covering. We got to be able to slide the line the proper way. So number 2 is knowledge. Number 3 is toughness. And toughness is not about taking a hit, because if once you get to a certain level, you can take a hit or you can't. It's that mental toughness, that grind of being the quarterback. You know, there's no gray area for us quarterbacks. We get too much credit when we win and too much blame when we lose. You know, that's that position. So it's the toughest position in sports, you know, being the quarterback, especially at the NFL level. I mean, everything they throw at you and the, you know, playbooks this big and everything else. So, you know, number 4 is footwork. And I think you would agree with me being a DB, Nick. You know, if you didn't have footwork, man, you weren't covering anybody, right? Well, quarterbacks, everything's based, all our timing, everything's based on our feet. Again, like I said, a 3-step drop, a 5-step drop, a 5 and a hitch, a short 5, a 7, you know, 7 and a hitch, all depending on where our footwork is. Well, our feet, we actually throw with our feet. If our feet can put us in position to make throws, and we can throw a football, we're gonna have some success. And the last one for me, everyone talks about arm strength, and I disagree. You know, I think it's accuracy and efficiency. Again, it goes back to that footwork. I got to put myself in position. I got to make the right read, have the knowledge and understanding of the game to make the right read and put the ball in a position where my wide receiver can have success and get that yak. Which, you know, as a safety, you'd never want to give that up, right? Even if he makes a tackle, I mean, if he makes a catch, you want to make that tackle. But if you throw it on time, a rhythm throw, let's say it's just a 10-yard out by the slot and you got to go right outside. Well, you're coming downhill, but if I can hit him right that break, instead of pinning him on the sideline where you're knocking him out, and just pin him out right there, now he turns and gets me a couple more. You know what I mean? It's just that rhythm and timing. Again, everything we do is with our feet. I teach from here down,
Now, what makes your camp here different than some of the other quarterback camps either in San Diego or around the country?
You know, I can't speak for anyone else. I can only speak on what I do here. You know, a lot of these guys have been working with me for about 9 years. I've been doing this for almost 15, specifically 9 just in the actual camp setting. But honestly, I'm anal retentive about fundamentals. I'm a mechanic guy, and I'm a guy that starts with your feet and works my way up. I constantly work on your head. I have a fitness and nutrition guru. I have people like yourself that get to come down, you know, with Nervous System and educate, you know, my clients. I have an academic gentleman who comes in, handles all their ACT, SAT prep. If they're struggling in school, he knows who to get them to take care of and get tutoring. I mean, I think I provide much more with a lot less. You know, I mean, I'm fortunate to have a facility to use right now, and they come in here. I actually played football here at Orange Glen High School. I'm a graduate, and still on a record or 2 maybe, you know, back from when I played. But, you know, it's just a great opportunity to help give kids the opportunity, really for me, just to get a college education and play football. And I love this game. The passion I have for it is I want to give these kids all the opportunities that, I didn't have this when I was growing up, but I had some great coaches. But I didn't have this individual training. Someone helped me with fitness and nutrition. My guy Clark Bartram has been on 400 covers of, magazines, and is one of the most trusted professionals in the nation. And he's 51. You saw him earlier, and still ripped and shredded. And just did two covers 2 or 3 months ago. I mean, it's ridiculous. So it's that type of stuff. We just try to, under promise, over deliver. But I guarantee you, I'll make you that much better today if you show up.
Now, I was doing some research, and I saw that one of your guys is Drew Brees, a guy that I played with for the New Orleans Saints, and he played here in San Diego. Now, how do you work with a quarterback like that on that professional level? You know what,
honestly, I was fortunate enough, a gentleman named Todd Durkin down at Fitness Quest 10 brought me in to help me work his workouts. We got a big group of the NFL guys that come in. I am fortunate to do this about a month before they go into camp. And it's 2 days on the field, 4 days in the weight room, in the training room with Todd. So on the field stuff, I just put them through their drills. Honestly, a guy like Drew, he's so set in his ways. I've been doing it for so long. We talk a little bit. I'm there to tell him if something's off or he has a question, I can give him a little feedback. I'm just an extra set of eyes there because there's no filming out during that time. But we have pros that come down and run wideouts, run wide receiver routes for us. Sproulsy comes down. Him and Drew are real tight, obviously. Carson and his backup out at Phoenix. It's a great group of guys that come in and work. And I get fortunate enough to bring a bunch of my younger guys down to watch that so they can see the work ethic. Our warm-up would bury everyone out here. Heck, our warm-up buries some of the pros that show up that aren't in shape. You know what I mean? So it's amazing what those guys are able to do and the consistency with it and the little things. I constantly point out to my players, watch Drew on this. Every single rep is 110%. Maybe 110, just 100%. It's full tilt. He never practices bad habits. That's why he doesn't have many. Now, understand he may not have had the greatest year this past year, but if you look at his body of work, it's pretty darn impressive. It
is pretty darn impressive. Now, for the kids who might be seeing this, and even kids who want to get involved with a camp like this, what would you tell them they need to do moving forward? Not just coming and joining Cree Morris's camp here in San Diego, but what would be some of the key components that you would like to leave them with?
Honestly, I just want them to, you got to love this game. And you gotta coach with passion and see some of these kids are out just because they're going through the motions. And I tell their parents, if they're not working on this stuff when I'm not here, don't bring them to me. And they look at me like I'm crazy. I'm like, no, you don't get it. I don't want to waste my time if your son doesn't want this, because it's got to come from him. So number one, you got to have that want to, which you and I, grew up, a little bit different in that aspect. This is all I ever wanted to do, ever. And so they got to have the want to. They got to have academics. If you're below a 2.0, I tell them don't come to me. Flat out. If you're below a 2.0, you can't see me. At quarterback should be a 3.0. You have to have academics. We're student athletes, not athletic students. And you've got to have that first. So we stress that every day at the end of practice. We have talks. Again, I brought in everyone I possibly can to give these kids assists in that aspect, including providing tutoring and ACT, SAT prep, like I mentioned. So it's those type of things that we got to have. And then number 3 is you got to put in time when you're not here. Because what I teach specifically in quarterbacking is muscle memory. We run the same warm-up every single time. It's exactly the same, because I have to teach that muscle memory. Because in the heat of battle, your body's gonna do whatever it knows.
What it comes naturally.
What comes naturally. But if you haven't trained it naturally to remember that muscle memory that I need to get out, you know what I mean? For me, for my guys not to fall step, to be able to move up in the pocket. Earlier we were banging on the quarterback as they're moving out of the pocket. Be able to have a little physical contact and still trying to make that throw. And it's those type of things, but you got to practice that. You got to train that. I'm not a quarterback coach that has a million drills. Now, honestly, I probably have 8 to 10 drills total, and we do them consistently. So your body understands the footwork and how to stay in set position. So as I talk about, to be able to make that throw, got to have it.
Well, Cree, man, I know you're out here, you getting these kids in shape. Appreciate it. Thank you much.
Thank you very much.